Buckle up, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the StarCraft 2 World Championship Series Americas Edition. I'm Nathanius, joined by Zombie Grub, who's moving to the second half of today's broadcast. We're done with the European matches. It's time for things to get funky.
Actually, I really think these matches are going to be really fun. And probably closer than all 2-0s. 5 matches, 2-0s.
Yeah. I expect that as well. For those of you curious about the format and the rules of our tournament here, WCS Winter. It's been good times. It's been going on for a little while now as we're moving into our groups. There's a ton of group stages, 32 competitors competing in this first stage. 8 of them are going to advance to the round robin playoffs, where we will then seed them, and feed them into a bracket where they will fight to the death for $60,000. It's a lot of money. It's brutal competition. The stakes have never been higher, Zombie Grub. A lot to play for.
Never been higher, you say? Not even like first place wins all stakes high?
I mean, for this type of show, I guess.
Yeah.
We're not on a big stage with $100 grand on the line for one guy with literally nothing for anybody else. But we do have a lot of money on the line, like we were talking about. Let's take a look at the prize structure, as that first place is really good. Okay, we already showed it. Good.
Yeah.
I'm not paying attention, so. I was trying not to look at the preview monitor. I was trying to be professional. I messed up.
So who's the non-professional here?
I don't know.
Do we blame production? Do we do that on time?
No, I think everyone's going too well, and I was just trying to make sure we got through everything. So with that being said, here is Group E. We've got Time going up against DisK. We've got Probe going up against Future for our Americas group. Who's your favorite player and why?
Oh, geez. Wow. Okay, then. Time, because Terran.
It's Terran time, as they say. 2 TvPs. You know, chat has just been so positive when Terran's been playing against Protosses. They really appreciate the extremely mature and level-headed discussion you guys are having, as it's been a treat to spend my time during my breaks reading your very enlightening comments. With that being said, the first series, as you said, Time versus DisK.
Yes.
DisK is a very interesting player. Have you been able to cast a bunch of his matches?
No, actually.
I've played him a good few times.
Okay.
My number one thing I can say about him is that whenever I think I've finally gotten away with something, 8 Void Rays come out of nowhere and kill everything.
Gotcha.
I don't expect Time to do any sort of mechanical shenanigans against him, but DisK is a cheeky player, and he's a guy that I don't really beat. But I do play him regularly on NA.
Okay.
He's very solid. I know he likes his Stargates. That's about all I can say about him.
Would you say it is because you play the way you do?
It's probably because of the way I play. I always try to mention when I talk about my strategies, and I'm like, yeah, well, you know, I struggle versus this. But it's because I only build Cyclones and Hellions and Siege Tanks. So.
Yeah, that does make a bit of a difference. But even if that wasn't the difference, I would say that there's a substantial gap between even people in GM who are damn good at this game and people who are pros, and then people who are pros who practice on the Korean server, and then like so on and so forth, right? So even if DisK might get like a cheeky win because of something a little silly, he is just like that. Time's mechanics might just be good enough. You know, if he's got some strong TvP builds, so he talked about it in the last group for Europe, that there's like a point where Protoss seems to, like, if they can't beat those tank pushes, the early tank pressure, they take too much damage, it feels like an imbalanced matchup for their side, and it flips.
Well, Terran versus Protoss right now is just those 2-base tank pushes for the most part. Like, if you're looking at evenly matched players, we saw it in GSL, we're seeing it in WCS, and I think we got a couple pretty good macro-ish games out of Kasa's first series against Petit Drogo, but other than that, we generally expect Terran to try and win it quickly. I expect to see that out of Time. I expect to see some proxies. I expect to see 2-base tank push if it doesn't go past that.
Right.
Funny thing about Americas, though, and this trend will always be true for some reason, anybody who plays on this server can beat anybody else who plays on this server, which makes me completely dumbfounded as to who I actually like in this group and who I think can win.
There seems to be a lot to talk about. We are on game number 1, Kairos Junction. In the bottom right, as the red Terran player, he is Time.
Yeah. His opponent in the northwest of the map, representing Psystorm Gaming, he is DisK.
Well, yeah, so I think time, you know, to touch on how time is going to play, I do think time is, I mean, for multiple reasons, going to look a lot like a Korean player, right?
Yeah.
Like, he spends his time in Korea, he practices on Korea whenever possible, and we did see a change up from that, you know, section of the world, China, Taiwan, whatever, that they were at one point, you know, their own individual style.
Right.
Like, strongly so. It's really kind of changed so that maybe some of their protoss are still a little weird,
Yeah.
but mostly they're producing, you know, just a little bit lower skilled, the Korean styles. And Time has fit that for all of his WS ops. He showcased it in Montreal last year. So.
Oh, yeah. He's also just really fun to commentate because his name is Time and also just drives everybody insane. But you're completely right. There was a period of time where it was like a very homogenous style that those players had, and then they got so good at those styles that when they brought them to WCS, we'd be like, oh, wow, this is really weird, like Mass Phoenix Colossus. We never see really this too much. And that kind of got those players to kind of, I guess, permeate their builds throughout the rest of the world, but have been struggling to keep up since they've, you know, not really had the surprise factor of, oh, I'm doing this. I think it was like watching Jim for like the millionth time do that proxy robo outside the Zerg's base. I'm like, okay, man, it was cool the first 10 times, but people are not going to keep losing to this. And they didn't.
I mean, it's possible that Time does have his own brand of TvP. I was basically shocked casting a lot of these qualifiers from multiple tournaments that it was a very, like, there was a jump between the Korean server and the Koreans playing and how they were just like proxy, all in tank push. It doesn't win, then like screw it type thing. And the Europeans and the North Americans, who usually North Americans kind of like, again, replicate the Korean style, but no, like their server stuff, they're actually taking it to mid and late game TvP, and I was like, wait, you didn't get the memo? Like, what's going on here? Of course, today and past week, we've seen a decent amount of tank pushes and whatnot, but still more like, you know, like with Koss, right? We saw him go more into actual stim late game TvP.
I think the non-Korean Terrans are being very fair in terms of the awareness that their opponents are not Korean Protoss players. So the things that they think are difficult to deal with, they're like, you know what? Non-Korean Protoss is probably not going to be able to shut me down so hard that I can't play a macro game. And that's why we're still seeing a little bit of that. I do like that a Reaper is getting squeezed out here. I don't know how intentional this was for Time with his reactor. Barracks finishing that add-on, but can still use that to get that little bit later scout. Run it around. There's a couple of blocks actually set up in DisK's base for Reaper, but we'll see what he can get done.
Man, that depth shade really has been nerfed, hasn't it? It was a long time ago. Yeah, I didn't see the second barracks, so could still be suspicious of a starport somewhere.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We actually saw Special do this, didn't we? In
probably.
Yeah, Special did this thing where he didn't get the starport. He just went straight for the 2 barracks, and he actually went combat shield and pushed with like 2 tanks, and just like 12 or 13 Marines.
That might have been Special, but I think actually it was Hero Marine.
I think they both did it.
They probably both did it, right? Like,
yeah.
But I agree.
That's more of like one of those builds that we're seeing, right? And
yes.
TY might have done something like this as well.
Yeah. I mean, it is a change up. You know, you are getting a little bit of like, is there a starport or isn't there from the what you hopefully is a Protoss who cannot scout you. In this case, he didn't successfully get the full scout, but then you have a nice defensive factory that can help you against some early pressure, but still a ton of bio production because you do have that second barracks. Obviously, not really a lot of scouting from Time. You know, when you get a medevac drop, for instance, you get that secondary scout, you get to see if there's like a Dark Shrine on the way, or anything really. And so far, Time is also lacking the complete scouting. It was charge first from a Twilight Council.
Yeah, DisK does do this, yeah. So I actually really like this. The fast charge with the nice number of zealots makes it really hard. If you were to be doing a tank push anytime soon, which it still feels like it's a little bit far off unless he just pushes with 1 tank, like the number of zealots that he has with the damage the charge does, it's going to be really, really good for getting on top of these Marines and dealing a ton of damage. Blink is really nice, but some of the fastest tank pushes do hit at a time where Blink is not really that useful unless you catch something in the middle of the map. So having charge is just like, nope, I can immediately collapse on your push if you attack me. And we see there, Time drops a scan for an observer, and he is going to move his way across map. He did not get an observer, but it was the paranoia scan.
This observer is a little late to the party. Might have just caught a Marine or something like that. He is not posturing on his third base quite yet. There he goes now, but Time's already there with his Cyclones, his Marines. Stim is almost done. Not a lot of support for them. And the tank is, okay, being escorted. That's what's happening here. So just one tank, but abusing this position on Kairo's Junction could still do a lot of damage.
Still gonna be really hard to take this fight, though. There's the charged Zealots with a Guardian Shield moving in on the army, and that tank doing some friendly fire to the Marines as the Stalkers with that sentry push forward a little bit more. So the tank is gone. There's still Marines here, though, with the Cyclones.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that happen there, really, but it's not over yet. Just want to make sure there's not actually going to be a substantial win here for either player. I think time is forced retreat.
Great dodge on that Cyclone with the pickup. But still going to be able to clean this up.
Wow.
You know, I think that was actually one of the changes that they made. Once upon a time, I think the only reason that Cyclone survived is because of that change. But Zealots used to be incapable of missing their second swipe, no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
Like if a unit jumped into a bunker halfway through a Zealot attack, it would die in the bunker, including units that went into medevacs.
Yeah.
But,
good point. But you know, about that fight, like the Zealots were a little out of that Guardian Shield, and if Time had focus fire with the tank, and it's hard to, you know, you have to repetitively do it. But if he could have, then I actually think that he's in a very strong position around
the
third
tank
base.
to right-click on the Stalkers there, or the Sentry really, getting either. But obviously, he does the bonus damage with the Stalkers. Colossus is out. Second one coming out too. We have the range upgrade almost done, and Blink is coming in. I think upgrade-wise, so far all we've got is +1 finishing very soon for Time. He sends a scouting Marine, just kind of sprints it forward into the natural of DisK. Just trying to get an idea, an inkling of what is going on.
The factory is still on a tech hub? Oh, okay, yeah, I swapped it finally, so. Just a couple more tanks into the Wintermine production. We are going into, Blink Colossus, I mean, mid-game TvP, and this is what I was talking about, like, a lot of the Koreans are just actually just forcing the issue, you know, like SED pull if the first tank push didn't work, but instead some of the foreigners, as we call them, the non-Koreans, are actually going into the mid-game and even the late-game TvP, hoping that they at least have an edge. And that's usually where those proxies and whatnot came into, is that you wanted to at least get an edge or even the scales probe-wise. And DisK is up. Speaking of those workers, he is up by 10. He's got 2 Colossus, a lot of force fields. I think he's good to go. I'm actually surprised he's the one that's breaking on the rocks.
Yeah, well, I guess he wants to prevent the tanks from being able to kind of siege on the bottom of him. Either way, tanks are going to siege. There's the first force fields. Guardian Shield popped up as well. Focus fires down the sentry that was using Guardian Shield. Really nice there. One tank still alive in the back. One of the Colossi got hurt a lot. No shield batteries here to bolster the defenses.
Yeah.
But Time's like, all right, you know what? That's probably not going to do anything now. I'm going home.
Yeah.
Oh, the Liberator in the main, I think, just got 5 probes, too.
That is correct, and it also is going to escape. Warpins were a little bit late. More Colossus on the way. We do have the Viking response with a second starport. Time is basically completely done with those tanks at this point, so that you're right about that. That could have been a bit more of a tricky situation, but then I was thinking the more the Colossus would burn down anything going through here, but it worked in DisK's favor. And Time not willing to give up on the aggression yet, even though his Viking count isn't really sturdy. He's got a lot of bio on the ground. He does not anymore have an upgrade lead, but he is about to in like 20 seconds, and he's hoping to catch DisK slipping a little bit.
Yeah, he's going to try to pull him towards where these mines are. Good shot. Spreads across the Protoss army there. He does have another mine available, and he's going to try to dive on this ramp and pick off a good amount of these units, but another Colossus is going to come out from the natural expansion, just finishing in time. And there's the Stalkers giving chase to this Terran army, and Time is going to get smacked back once again.
Yeah, it felt like an overextension, but, you know, I would say, you know, he's hoping to find DisK slipping, as in maybe there was Colossus split somewhere to deal with a drop that wasn't actually coming or something like that. That was a bit of a bold move to do without that heavy Viking count to help you in case, you know, you don't kill the Colossus, in case there is a counter, and that's exactly what's happening here. 4 Colossus, a decent ground army, no Warp Prism, so maybe DisK doesn't win with this push, but I think he can take on this army. He's going to go for it.
Yep, just pushing straight in. Colossi are mostly shooting at that supply depot and a few SCVs that were pulled on the south side, so kind of messing with the targeting AI there of the Colossi with the SCV pull. Now he's going to be able to fight a full battle, but the Viking count is really leaning into the Colossi. We do only have 2 remaining. One of them is going to get picked off trying to recall out, and the other one's going to barely escape.
Yeah, that wasn't as pretty as it was, you know, it looked like it was set up, you know, like a really easy field goal, and then, like you said, you know, just kicked it off to nowhere. Those Colossus, man.
Yeah, just doinked it off the refinery. That's not where you want to kick the ball. And I think you're kind of seeing an example there. You know, there's a reason why, and especially in the foreign scene, you're going to play these longer games without as much worry. DisK making a little bit of a throw there. It's a scenario where having like a warp prism can be really nice to reinforce with that attack, and also kind of juggle the Colossi. But the fact that they shot the SCVs by the refinery was just oof.
Yeah, yeah. When the bio was so clumped up too.
You got target fire, man. You got target fire that.
Yes, that would have been a substantial difference of trades. You know, again, maybe this doesn't win with that, but it would have been a better trade. Now he is down. He was only able to save one of those Colossus. He's trying to replace with more splash, so that's going to give him an opportunity to come back. He's got some zealots that are harassing this 4th base, maybe stop turning into a planetary. But what about this giant Terran army here? Up 40 army supply has decent upgrade advantage, and Disruptors aren't getting their shots. Colossus go down without really helping, and that 3rd Nexus is gone.
Yep, great pickoff here for time, and with the number of Vikings that he has, and look at this, 4 Liberators on the way behind. There's really not a whole lot here for DisK. He does have Psystorm finishing up. How many Templar do we have? Just 1 on the field at the moment, so he's not going to be dropping any miracle storms. I mean, 1 Templar turning the tide, I'm not sure is going to be the case.
That'd be a really good Templar.
I mean, he'd get his own movie at that point. Book deal.
Yes.
Everything, autograph sessions, and them all.
DisK does have that 3rd still up and running, even though he hasn't quite taken the gases. Just a little surprising.
Yeah, he kind of just set this one up. There's that Templar. There he is. Hiya! I tickled some Marauders.
Yeah, tickled is the right word. There are a surplus of Vikings. You know, there's only 1 Colossus left over. It's more about the Disruptors, but then the Liberators come in, and while there's a decent amount of Stalkers, it's just...
Can't do anything. The Liberators are perfectly zoning out the army.
Yeah, the Disruptors are hoping to take down the Marauder count. Maybe the Stalkers could then blink in, but it is, you know, big army supply. Actually, some Zealots come in from behind to complicate matters, but it's not enough of a complication. Oh! Okay.
DisK avoiding upgrades this game, by the way, I think is a real big mistake. In Terran versus Protoss, one of the biggest advantages of PvT right now is you get that 3rd Nexus, you have all that chrono for double forge when you're doing this big gateway play. And like right now, if he had 3-3 on gateway, which a lot of other Protoss players would, I think maybe these reinforcements can do a lot. But he's only got +1 attack. That's it, just +1 attack on his Zealots and Stalkers. No armor upgrades. The Zealots melt.
Yeah.
Also, Vikings dumpster Stalkers in hand-to-hand battles like that, too.
They do, they do. GG. DisK got himself a nice early game, early mid-game, and then that Colossus.
Well, he just went for the counterattack. I mean, he went full NA right there is all I can say. Like, he's like, oh, I won the attack. I could just push across the map with just my army, and that's it. And then time was like, all right, I got to spread out a little bit, pull some SCVs from here. Oh, yeah. Look at that. All those Colossi are shooting at 4 SCVs. Looks like I win the game.
It was unfortunate. I think DisK had, as I said, that good position, but if he can do it once, he can do it again.
Yeah.
And he'll be a little more cautious about his attack. Yes, if he had microed, maybe it does damage, but it was one of those things where you look at it and you're like, this looks good. And then if you had the Warp Prism, if you had the peace of mind to say, okay, no, pull back, the game is like pretty even. It continues on.
Yeah. I like the fast charge opening. After the way that he defends like the first Marine tank thing, I think then you just drop 2 forges. But going into Colossi, I don't hate it. I just think that double forge is... It's like
powerful.
It's just so good. Like there's almost no reason not to do it because the versatility of being able to use those warp-ins to help. If he's able, like if those are 2-2 zealots or 3-3 zealots charging in instead of +1, then that's the difference between doing nothing and cleaning up enough of the bio that the Stalkers can get down, like as you were saying, to blink underneath the Liberators, and the damage output of the Colossus is also hugely affected by that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen in those individual fights, but overall, time playing a, I guess, smarter game. Just making one huge mistake, but even like earlier on with that tank push, I think time could have done more damage.
Yeah, he could have
with
focus fired the tank onto this.
Yeah, that's still scary for DisK to think of. Like, okay, I actually maybe barely held that 3rd, so that was this is gonna be a difficult matchup. Even though DisK made it look somewhat even for a little while there, it is time, a player who actually had really kind of a breakout performance last year for Montreal. As I said, he needs to have that practice in Korea on the Korean server, so on and so forth. And yeah, I think that he is a good prediction. If you're going to predict someone to get out of this group, time would be a good one, but it's also a really interesting group, thankfully, and we should have some 2-1s. 1-2s, all the ads.
I agree. In the top left, we have our blue Terran player leading the series 1-0. He is time.
in the bottom right, as the red Protoss, he is Psystorm's DisK. Oh, he played Terran before switching to Protoss. I guess that's why I thought he was Terran when I first looked at his name.
Yeah. Has anyone ever gotten you with like the portrait of the race in the loading screen?
Yes. Of course.
Dude, that I had this game. I played against a guy who does play Zerg, and I see like the GM border. He's got the big Zerg portrait. I'm like, all right. And then I just like go do my thing, go my supply depot, my barracks, my command center. I'm so greedy versus Zerg, and I'm like, life is good. Then 3 Reapers jump into my main. I'm like, oh.
I swear sometimes it messes up. Like, I will see Zerg. I mean, there's a Zerg portrait as well.
Yeah,
and I'll
and
be
I
like,
swear,
that is Zerg.
and I
That is
swear
100%
that he's
Zerg.
playing, yep.
And then yeah, Reapers show up, and I'm like, well, that, you know, I can't prove that I saw Zerg, I suppose.
I guess that's the trick: is set your portrait because it's so much bigger than the race logo to be like a very obvious portrait of.
Yeah. Well, you know, before they changed the art style, because the that loading screen has changed a few times.
Yeah.
So like years ago, I did have a Zergling portrait, and I would get so many Protoss that Forge Fast expanded against me.
Nice.
I didn't mean to. Zergling's just my favorite unit, but it was some free wins.
That portrait is part of your meta. It's part of your meta, your play. Same as the cheese spray. Do you ever use the sprays to get inside someone's head?
No, but I heard you much in favor of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The nuke here one is fun because you put it next to their base, and I had a guy post once. He's like, I can't stop staring at this spray next to my base. There are words in it. It's very distracting. I'm like, good. Good.
Only you could send out like a cleanup crew, like their graffiti actually clean.
Well, you could spray over it or put a building on it, I guess, technically.
Building on it, yeah, I guess would work the most effectively. Anyways, Port Alexander is going to, I mean, any map really has a decent tank push. Maybe Year Zero is a little too big for some of the more potent ones, but we are seeing mostly Kairos Junction first and then Port Alexander second. Like, you know, the old maps are always picked.
We had a good bit of Year Zero today as well.
We have, yes, and in the last weeks as well, but it's just like, you know, those old maps are always so appealing.
Yep. People are always going to prefer what they're used to, which makes a lot of sense. You have a lot of money on the line, so chancing it on a map that you're maybe not as familiar with, you don't know if your strategy is going to work, can be a bit of a risk. So Robo Facility, I find this intriguing that there's not a fast Twilight Council with it, but I'm interested to see where DisK goes here.
That's what Drogo is doing on this map. You know, at one point not effectively, next point very effectively. So we'll see. I mean, it still also has to do with, I think, you know, we can say that the Terran dictates the pace for the first six minutes, basically. It's all about the Protoss trying to make sure they're not bamboozled by Banshees, or think it's Banshees, actually a Raven with tanks coming at you, and or something else. And DisK is going to have at least an Observer nice and quick to scout that. And he is going to go into Colossus.
Really fast Robo
Yes.
Bay. Do you think it's Colossus, or is he going to go for the M canning build?
I mean, I don't, it's NA, I guess. But I would say usually Colossus. The Disruptor's really difficult to use with low amounts of units, right? So I'm canning just kind of trademarks that one.
That's fair. Shield batteries on the way to help set up the defense. That hallucinated Phoenix, I think you see that. One shield battery will stop a Banshee from killing a probe for like 20 seconds or something insane. Shield batteries are really good against Banshees because of how slowly Banshees shoot.
Yeah, I forget what they turned the kill shot into. It's like 2 to 10 or something insane. Like, it's, I think it's really high.
Basically, you have a lot of time. Gravitic Drive.
Oh,
and a Warp Prism.
Ooh.
I mean, you can Colossus drop with this too. It's
you could,
yes. It's not as popular because you don't have the Disruptor really can like win you the game with this if you get like 1 or 2 of the just the right shots, like on the army or something. Didn't we see someone did this to actually defend against the tank push as well, and it worked really nicely before. We saw this actually in one of the groups already. It might have been that here. I'm not sure.
So Time didn't actually go for Cloak. He only went for the 1 Banshee, and I mean, not that 2 Shell Bears are going to be useful in general, but maybe as for a tiny bit of an overreaction from DisK. I think the Banshee's kind of main purpose, other than getting those surprise probe kills later on, is also just to draw the army away and scout where the army is, to let this attack get nice and close, but loses the Wood Mine right off the bat. Nice pokes and prods here. That tank can take out that sentry. There it goes.
I think that's very risky fighting there. That tank got a lot of damage in on this.
Yeah, that was... a little bit longer than expected. Liberator's gonna come in here. There it is. Probe in it?
Does he even need to use the disruptor shot here? I guess they'll be able to tank faster.
Yeah. That ends up working out well enough. Time gets a scout, of course, on the disruptor drop. Maybe gets a missile turret or two where you usually wouldn't. Liberator did do some damage, but then we also had something. Oh, actually, that was just on the front line, wasn't it? So
Yeah, it's SCVC pulled.
yeah, Liberator is going to get away though, and Port Alexander has a ton of dead space.
Yes,
You
it
know,
does.
without a Stargate, that could do quite a bit more damage.
Yeah, Liberators are really annoying here. I feel like a lot of the maps in this pool have like this insane amount of space for you to put libs behind, especially if you get like range at some point later on, which we've actually seen a bit of.
Yeah, it can happen. See, that Banshee is still running around, so I mean, at this point, like a couple of probes doesn't seem like a big deal. It is starting to add up, but again, mostly that Time is getting some really nice scouting, and we assume that his macro is going rather well. Back on his side of the map, it is maybe a little late to the. Actually, he is late to the +1 armor because he went double NGB, but otherwise, it's set up defensively in case DisK were to try and counter. Did that Warp Prism really do very much? Not yet.
He's got a probe in it as
Yeah.
well. So I guess his idea is that he can also drop the probe and use it to build pylons where he wants the prism to eventually be. I don't know.
That would be cool. I think it might be to soak a tank shot. Because it does seem like it's on purpose.
Zombie Grove, don't bring those 300 IQ plays over here, okay? My Terran brain's not capable of understanding such complex concepts.
You know, it's so bizarre, too, because SCVs and medevacs can actually repair stuff in medevacs. You'd think we'd have 300 IQ plays, but...
Well, it's just hard. If I could make it so my medevac would never drop the SCV, but only ever drop the tank, then I think I'd be more willing to.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, the probe is being used, like, okay, now and then he just does I mean, it was both.
Yep.
You're both right.
There you go.
There you go.
Imagine if the medevac could eat the SCV and just permanently take up one cargo space to repair anything in there. There you go. The medevac just loses cargo space, but also becomes a repair bay.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah.
That's right. StarCraft 3. Let's get it in.
Colossus is naturally what follows up here, so he's going to be up to 3. I mean, maybe even up to 4.
I want to see more upgrades. I want to see more upgrades. He's just not getting a Twilight Council.
Yeah.
He doesn't have Blink. He doesn't have Charge.
I totally get, like, you know, it is kind of that old standard that if you go Colossus, you get the 1 upgrade, right? But I really feel like in these games, both of these games, you could fit in too.
So important, yeah. Plus the double upgrades for Zealots, for Zealot Stalkers, so important.
Oh, what? You got 2 Banshees at some point?
Yeah. He squeezed another one out.
Yeah. All right, then. Okay. That's going to continue to do damage, despite not having Cloak. That has got to be annoying. Are you serious? It's really going to happen here.
He doesn't have Blink.
That's
What are you going to do?
Yeah. He started Charge, and then maybe the Banshees were like, you know, he was like, the heck
No
with
Blink,
this.
no Blink, no Stargate. There's nothing you can do here. Banshees are going to just come in unless you leave your Stalkers here all game long. Which, by the way, gives Time a lot of that.
Kind of gets some extra vision, I guess. Or tries to move the Banshees rather with Hallucinated Phoenix. That sometimes works out. But a nice hold position from Time means that those will continue to scout where the army is. He will have an open opportunity to make his way across the map. Third to third. Uh-oh.
Oh, disruptor shot, flank.
Oh, almost really good.
Trying to trim the fat a little bit before the army arrives.
I mean, Time has a decent number of tanks. He has upgrades. He is hitting before Charge or Blink. Things could go well for him, but he is... If his tanks don't do well, like something comes from behind, for instance, then this Colossus would rip the Bio army still at a count of 3. That's a little dangerous, and Time decides not to involve himself with the Protoss army, pulls back and wait for more Vikings. He had a second starport just finish. 4th CC, 2-2 upgrade. Still no second forge from DisK. This would also be a time I'd love to see it, as he has seen the army once again pull back, but still not going for it.
Nope, that Hallucinated Phoenix, though. Having a good time with those Banshees.
Is that the second one he sent out? Like, he just is hoping that they'll stop being on hold?
I guess, yeah. The tenacity, very, very committed.
Oh, the disruptor drop's still going somewhat strong. I mean, I think he's gotten like 4 or 5 SCVs every time he's dropped it
Disruptor
offensively.
is low on hit points, but yeah, doing a lot of work. Vikings on the hunt.
I'm always going to think there's something happening at that third base, and it's always going to be the Banshees being attacked by a Phoenix. It's great. The Vikings missed the Warp Prism.
The intentional messing with the caster play.
Yes, exactly.
Charge
Adepts.
on the way, random 4 Adepts.
All right, well, sometimes they work out better than Charge.
Get a few SCVs. 3.
3 it is 4 it is. I do like that he's using his tanks kind of spread out to make sure that he doesn't take too much harassment damage. Go ahead and move some to the 4th base as well. Has he stopped making tanks? Kind of. But he went to a really decent count. I mean, 9 off of that one factory.
9 tanks is good. It's a bit dangerous because of the threat of Zealots, but since DisK isn't really getting upgrades, I like the tanks more. Those Zealots are not going to be very tanky. They're not going to be very strong. One thing that Time has really, I think, done a great job of focusing on in this match is his own upgrades. He's got 2-2 coming in soon. +1 vehicle weapons. I always prefer ship weapons because they benefit the Vikings versus the Colossi.
Yeah.
But also, if you get to +2, then your Liberators 2-shot Stalkers, which is a huge game changer.
Yeah, I'm always a little surprised when Terrans don't, even when they are going Vikings or they are going mass tanks. I'm like, yeah, but the Liberators +2 are pretty good. But these Vikings, while an okay number, I think it really is. Actually, no, there's more. There we go. Okay, 10 is still okay. They're going to be able to take out 3 Colossus relatively fast, but then I'm definitely more of like, okay, the tanks. The tanks could do so much damage in these chokes.
Yeah, look at this position. If he can siege up on the natural here, breaking this is going to be so tough. There's still those 2 Banshees as well that are just waiting for a sweet opportunity. Come up on that Stalker. Okay, there's another one there, so that shouldn't do too much. Look at these tanks. Now he has a way. He could try to just run straight into the natural as well. He's going to force the fight. There's the Prism coming in to try and flank, not able to get the storms off from it. And the tanks and Vikings laid waste to this Protoss army so far.
Oh, that timing was almost perfect for DisK. The storm had just finished, but losing the War Prism and then everything else getting obliterated by the tanks in the low ground.
There were 3 High Templar in that one.
Yep.
So grab. Ouchie, wawa.
There was indeed. That was going to be a very tough break. Even with the storms, the tanks are still going to be able to blast away. They can, you know, actually live through a few. DisK is not going to be tapping out right now, but things are looking grim in this first series of the day. This time a bit more focus power on the Stalkers from the tanks, and just too much bio anyways with decent upgrades. Good upgrades, actually.
Yeah, fantastic upgrades.
Really.
And Time takes the 2-0 over DisK. Very well played by our Terran player there. And, I mean, honestly, I feel like it just boils down to Time built up, did a really good job. DisK was not able to put on the pressure that he needs to. Yeah. And I think really didn't take advantage of the strengths right now of Protoss in this matchup. Like, we do see Protoss players get Colossi, but I feel like the focus on upgrades and particularly getting 2 forges is something that every single good Protoss is doing right now if the game makes it past that initial tank push phase.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the best way to put it, is that there were moments where he did, you know, actually push back a tank push or saw Time retreat and get more in a macro game, and that's when we see those top tier Protoss, right? Like they fit in that second forge, they produce more probes, get a 5th Nexus faster, really take the map, and it just felt a little bit lackluster as far as a macro to macro game.
My brain just goes back to a great example that we already had, Gung Fu Banda. I mean, the way that he played, he sharked the map with the Stalkers, he had his follow-ups very well done, and it was just really impressive play by him overall. But that does mean the winner of our first match is Time. So congratulations to him. We do have a few more games coming up, don't worry. We're just getting started over here in Americas. We've got Probe going up against Future. That's going to be our second match. More Terran vs. Protoss coming up next. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss